I woke up and it was there, a lump I could feel in my throat, like something I had eaten was stuck halfway swallowed. It wasn't painful, really, but I could feel it there, constantly. As the day continued, the feeling only got worse. Now I'm in the bathroom, holding myself up because my legs are about to give out. Sweat is dripping from my forehead and I'm gasping for breath. I attempt to angle my head so that I can see to the back of my throat. Not much luck, just a glimpse of something gray and slimy. I just had to get it out. If I could remove it, I would be fine. Opening my mouth as wide as I could, I reach inside. My eyes water as I fight the gag reflex. In no time I feel the tips of my fingers rub against the lump. I feel my esophagus contract as I fight to find purchase. Saliva runs down my chin and along my neck. I got it! With a quick yank, I pull the thing from my throat, only to find that it won't stop coming. I try to ignore the feeling of its thousands of teeny legs fighting against my fingers as I continue to pull its long body from deep within me. Without warning, pain shoots up my finger. It had bit me and I can feel pins and needles moving up my arm. I panic and my teeth come down, filling my mouth with viscous fluid as it is severed. But it didn't die. I know this because even though the piece in my hand stopped moving, I felt the rest of it crawl back down my throat. He said he'd get her back for it, but then he died, so Cindy didn't worry. Marlene tilted the 2 small sleeping pills into her mouth. She held the tablets under her tongue as she tilted her glass of water into her mouth. Running her hand through her gray blonde hair, she swallowed the medicine. She took a deep breath and leaned back in her bed. This would help her sleep. This would help her worry less about her daughter. While Cindy got Marlene's looks, she also got her father's reckless attitude. It had gotten better recently, but Marlene could remember the countless times she was called by a teacher to talk about Cindy's pranks. Marlene's eyes grew heavy, and she slipped beneath her blanket. Despite Cindy's prankster personality, Marlene knew there was a vulnerable side. Marlene had seen it in her eyes when Cindy got the news that her childhood friend had passed away. Marlene rolled over and was just falling to sleep when her phone rang. Groaning, she reached to her nightstand and answered it. Hello? The reception was bad, full of static and warped to the point where it could barely be understood. This is Felding Hospital. We've just had a young girl brought in with you as her emergency contact. She's been in a bad accident and is currently in surgery. We need you to come immediately. Marlene didn't respond. She didn't change into proper clothes. She didn't even lock the door. She just dropped the phone and ran to her car. She told herself it was a nightmare. She had fallen asleep, and the stress of her worry had caused this terrible dream. She said it aloud as her car barreled down the road, but she knew it was a lie. This was happening. This was reality. She knew this because she could still feel the pull of the sleeping pills. She still felt lightheaded, and her eyes kept drooping closed. She clicked on the radio and turned the volume up, but she was still drifting off. She shook her head a few times and pushed down on the gas. She didn't see the other car until it was too late. She felt her body fly through the windshield and spin through the air. She hit the ground with a sickening crunch, and the world around her slowly faded away as she breathed her last breath. Cindy pushed open the door to her mother's house. Her mother was probably sleeping by now. She grabbed a box of graham crackers and slumped into the seat at the kitchen table. That's when she noticed a small slip of paper lying on the table. On it was a message, written in the handwriting of a recently deceased friend. I told you I'd get you back. Confused, Cindy bit into the graham cracker. Then the phone rang. Moving to LA was supposed to be a good thing. All my life I'd been looking up to all the actors and actresses who were able to bring life to film and television. Now I could strive to do the same. Moving to LA was supposed to be a good thing, but 3 weeks later, and I already want to go back home. I was safe there. I could sleep. At first it was small. I would wake up to find my wallet on the floor when I had put it on my nightstand, or my laptop sitting on the living room table when I could have sworn I had brought it into my room with me. It gave me pause, but I shrugged it off. I had been working a lot. Maybe I'd just forgotten to pick them up. Then things got worse, and soon I was waking up to find my clothes littering the floor, or all of my doors and windows wide open. The police didn't help. They told me there was nothing they could do besides send a patrol over late, just to make sure things were okay. Nothing happened that night. I was in tears when they called to tell me not to prank a law enforcement agency. I was alone. There was no one to help me. Later, sleep evaded me. I lay there, on my side in the dark, staring at the door to my room, waiting for whatever was messing with me to enter. It was late. I don't know exactly what time. When I heard the first sounds, I was fighting a losing battle against the weight of my eyelids, when I heard the almost imperceptible sound of a window sliding open. My fingers tightly gripped my blankets, and every muscle in my body tensed. I wanted to reach the phone on my nightstand, but every time I thought I could, another sound echoed through the house, getting closer and closer to my room. Sweat ran down my forehead, soaking the pillow beneath me. My heart was beating so hard that I could hear it in my ears. I wanted to run screaming, but instead covered my head so that only my eyes were peeking from a hole in the blanket. My door swung slowly open to reveal the darkness of the hallway. Ghosts, I thought, until I saw several people wander into my room. Each person was clothed fully in black, only their eyes visible through the slit in their masks. I counted 8 people as they piled into my room. I felt a scream coming, and swallowed it as they began to wander around my room, not noticing that I was awake. I stayed still as they began shuffling through my drawers, and watched as one of the people I could still see pulled out a knife. I felt the scream coming again, but somehow knew that if they found me awake, I wasn't going to make it through the night. Once again, I forced the scream down as they carved the words "Helter Skelter" into my wall. Slowly, they began to leave, until there was only one left. They were standing nearby, so close that I could feel the heat from their body. My eyes widened as they knelt down to stare me in the face. I could see them smile beneath their mask. I could see the madness in their eyes. Then they stood, grabbing my phone from the nightstand. They tiptoed to the end of the hall, staring at me the entire time. Where they laid it on the floor, they waved and disappeared around the corner. I laid there staring at the glowing light of my phone, scared that they might be waiting for me to go for it. Even when the sun shone brightly through the windows, it took me hours to move. When I did, I carefully checked the house until I was sure they were all gone. Then I left. Now I'm sitting in the airport, waiting for a plane to get me out of LA.
Jeffrey moved away 6 years ago. A close friend lost to distance and busy lives. Sure, he called, but the calls decreased until he was just another birthday card I received a day late. I wasn't bothered by this, though. My life was just as busy. I had just gotten a new job and was recently married to the most beautiful person I had ever met. I didn't notice that he wasn't calling anymore until the day I picked up the phone and heard his voice on the other end. Just hearing his voice brought back memories of the cornfield behind my father's house, where we spent hours pretending to be explorers in a new world. Of course, we weren't always perfect friends. That cornfield was also the place where I had my first fight with Jeffrey over the woman that would become my wife. There was no winner. but by the end of it, we'd both decided to not let that come between us again. Then he moved away, we grew up, and I got this phone call. He was visiting family and he wanted me to come with him to the gathering. I didn't hesitate to say okay. I leaned down and kissed my wife as I slipped out the front door. I noticed the quality of his car as I slipped inside. Jeff had done well for himself. We spent nearly the entire time at the party catching up. He told me about the clinic he was opening and his own relationship. I told him about my students, my wife, and the baby we'd just adopted. We laughed about how foolish we'd been. We mourned lost time. We became close friends again. Then it was time to go. We piled into the car in silence, neither of us wanting the time to end, and neither of us knowing how we could fill the empty air. It was the radio that broke the ice. Soon we were singing along, and we forgot that the time we had was dwindling the closer I got home. I'm not sure what we hit, but the great time turned bad in an instant. I don't know how far the car flew. All I know is that halfway through the journey I had been thrown from it. Screams filled my ears as my body bounced off the ground and smashed into a streetlight back first. I heard my back snap and felt my heels smack the back of my head before falling to the ground. I heard the screeching of metal as the car slid upside down to a stop. There was a loud whistling in my ears, and the world was oscillating between blurry and frighteningly clear. In the distance I could see Jeffrey laying on the ground. He wasn't moving, and somehow I knew he was dead. Who knew that the few moments we had at the party would be our last together? I tried to move, but a warmth was crawling up my chest and numbing my body, so I sat, trying to remember all the smiles, tears, and good times we'd had. When the paramedics arrived and covered Jeff's body, I was delirious. I thought that was the worst part of my night. Losing a friend was the worst it could get, but then the paramedics walked over to me. They knelt and tore open my shirt. I could see it in his face as he glanced up to his friend. I felt my heart drop. I forgot about Jeffrey, and was only seeing my wife and child. I tried to scream, but it was caught on blood that had begun flooding my lungs. I watched one of the paramedics take a deep breath, and then, with a face of sadness, he shook his head.
I moved out of my parents' house when I was 20. I wanted to make sure that I wouldn't be bothered by the arguments they had daily, so I chose a house that was nearly 3 states away. It was a grand house, nestled in the woods at the end of a long driveway. At 3 large bedrooms and 2 baths, this house was massive. The land it sat on was bordered by a stone wall overgrown with vines, and the yard was huge. Once I removed the playground equipment from the backyard, I was positive that I'd have enough room to install a pool. I didn't notice the fingers until a week later. I was sitting on my couch, watching an old movie as I drifted to sleep, when I spotted them wrapped around the door frame, little fingers, as though a small child was hiding just outside the door. After I got no response from a yell, I decided to check. As I stood, the fingers slipped away, and I found nothing hiding around the corner. I checked the entire house, but it was empty. In hindsight, it was a mistake to chalk it off as a lack of sleep, but that is what I did. I woke up the next day, thinking it was all just a dream. Until I saw them again. This time there were 2 sets of fingers, wrapped around a stack of moving boxes sitting in my bedroom. Once again I yelled, but the fingers only wiggled a bit in response. Angry, I walked over to the boxes and lifted them away, only to find nothing there, just another pile of boxes, waiting to be emptied. I turned just in time to spot more fingers slip off my door frame. Quickly I ran to the hall, only to find it as empty as my room. Shaken, I slammed my door shut and tried to fall asleep. From then on, I saw the fingers almost daily, wrapped around my door frame, my furniture, my windowsill. The fingers were everywhere. Every time I saw them, there were more than the last. Soon they were accompanied with giggling and urgent whispers. I was barely sleeping. I spent most of my time away from the house. A home was supposed to feel safe, but every day in that place felt more oppressive and sad. I had decided to move out after I realized that my home was beginning to feel just like my parents' house had. I was spending my last night in that house when I saw the fingers again, all 12 sets, and one new one wrapped around the end of my bed. The new fingers were different though. These were clearly older and caked with dirt. The fingernails were torn apart, so much that some were caked in congealed blood. The air was heavy. The smell of old milk and decayed meat filled the room. My heart was beating against my chest, and I could feel the sweat drip down my back as I sat up. I didn't take my eyes off those fingers as I slid along the wall to my door. I had my hand on the doorknob when a loud, deep male voice yelled from the bottom of my bed, "Ready or not, here I come." I bolted from the room and out my front door. The entire time, the sound of many running feet followed me through the halls. It was right behind me as I leapt out into the night. I felt my body crash into the pavement and heard the door slam behind me. The sound of giggling echoed from the house as my car pulled from the driveway. I left the house, my belongings, and a set of half-dismantled playground equipment behind.
I loved this place. I wanted to spend every waking moment playing with Freddy, Bonnie, and Chica. 5 birthdays spent here. And on the days I didn't have a birthday, I spent my time staring in the windows, wanting to join the children laughing. I loved this place. I loved the children. I got my wish because of him. Now I stand, surrounded by their bodies, the thick purple lines running down my cheeks, not representing the sadness in my cold heart enough. I wasn't in time, so distracted by the music box that I wasn't in time. No one noticed that one of the machines was acting weird. Golden Freddy had always been so friendly. They never saw him coming. Just like me, his smile was so welcoming, and his badge, proof I could give him my trust. He was never caught because the company was quick to hide the incident. It was one child in the cold outdoors. Not their problem. Not their problem? Well, how do they feel now? Now that their bodies are littering the floor of their child-friendly establishment. I wasn't watching. I wasn't ready. I didn't expect him to come inside. Why did I get so angry? Why can't I just have fun? Clearly, the adults aren't willing to keep the children safe. They choose to turn their backs as the young ones are cut down by a madman in purple. Not anymore. Not while I can do something. The children didn't deserve this. They came here for fun, and now their blood flows like the tears I wish I could shed. I will give them a gift. I will give them life. Here, we will stand. Here we will save the children like the adults couldn't. Here where the kids come to smile, the adults will come to fear. It's their fault. And if he shows up again, oh, if he shows up again, we'll be sure to show him what we can do. He wanted to be Golden Freddy so bad, maybe we'll give him his wish. He'll scream. His eyes will break for forgiveness. He'll struggle against our metal hands. And then, as the last of his life leaves him, I'll lean in close. He'll look me straight in the eyes and he'll know that I've come for him. We'll sit like that for precious moments as his blood flows free. And as his eyes close for the last time, I'll whisper, "It's me."
They interact with the kids just fine, but when they encounter an adult, they just stare.
How many years has it been since I realized this wasn't a dream? I don't remember, and I've started telling time by the number of rats that found their way into my room. Truthfully, I've had to restart my count so many times because I've lost track of where I was. Things have not turned out the way I would have liked. It was supposed to be simple. It was supposed to be fun. Now I'm here, stuck in a prison within a prison. They humiliated you. The new facial recognition systems were a bit of a hiccup, but after I dismantled them, they weren't going to be recognizing anyone. All I had to do was slip into one of the suits, and I'd have my pick of those poor, suffering children. Children stuck with parents that barely cared, parents that left them here while they went off to wherever. Children that never learned to be happy when they get a gift of oblivion. They cornered you. I was careless, but what was I supposed to do? There she was, the one who started it all, staring at me with those sad, tear-filled eyes, and moving slowly toward me. I tried to leave, but there they stood, my children spitting the gift back at me. Why were they so mad? I had given them something they would have had to wait years for. The lucky ones would have clocked out in their teens, but many would have to endure this horrible, unforgiving life till they were old and alone. They locked you away. They wanted to get rid of me, but I wasn't ready to stop. Somehow I got around her and prepared the suit, but in my haste I didn't crank it enough. They wanted me gone, and as the metal bars and machinery tore into my flesh, I thought they had succeeded. I saw her watching me. I saw her tear-filled eyes smile as I tried to scream with lungs that no longer worked. I heard her whisper in my ear and resigned myself to my fate. But this is worse. Stuck somewhere between alive and gone. I am trapped in this suit, trapped in this room, forgotten and left to rust away, unable to fully die and unable to continue my work. All I can do is wait. Wait until there isn't enough of me left to care. Wait until existing is a chore. I want to hear the screams of children again.
Hey dude, you aren't gonna believe what I found.
Can you hear me? They said you might be able to hear me, and that talking to you could help. I doubt hearing my voice will help any, but if I don't try, this would be so much easier if you could look at me. But you can't. You're attached to all these machines, and I'm not supposed to touch you. But I just wish I could somehow pull you back from the edge. I don't want to lose you. Are you surprised? Me too. I spent so much time playing pranks on you that I never even thought about what things would be like without you around. Everyone's so quiet, and your bedroom door is left open all day. Sometimes at night I think I can hear you playing in there, but you aren't there when I look. I've never felt more horrible than those nights when I sit for hours in your room. When you get better, I don't know if you can hear me. What's the point? I caused this. You don't want me around. You'll learn this later, but as you get older your friends will make you think that being afraid is a weakness. You'll try to hide it, but it will always be there, just waiting to jump out at you. If you're stupid, like me, you'll lash out at anything that reminds you of your weakness. It will cause you to do stupid things. I never hated you. I was just afraid. Afraid of being afraid. But I would give anything to be afraid like that again. Because I'm scared right now. I've never been this scared before. I brought your flashlight with me. The one that you always kept under your pillow. I know I'm not supposed to touch you, but maybe if you can see where you're going, you might be able to make it back. There. Just hold on to it. It will protect you. I wanted to tell you this when you woke up, but the doctors say that we should hope for the best and expect the worst. So I guess I should just say it. I love you, bro. And I'm sorry. Dear Richard Strand, my name is Herbert Westley. I'm not sending this for the reward. All I want is to be told definitively that I am not crazy. I have been sitting on this information for 4 years, and only decided to send this to you when I heard of your work from the Black Tapes podcast. Maybe you can explain this so that it can stop bothering me. I was born on March 6th, 1987. On December 23rd, 1997, both of my parents and I were in a devastating car accident. My parents died instantly, and I lost my left leg. The state handed custody over to my grandparents, and after I recovered enough to leave the hospital, I was moved into my father's old room. I don't want to get into too much detail about my family life in this letter, but it is important to note that my mother had a falling out with her parents, so this would be the first time I'd see them that I could remember. This is also where I met Puddles, my grandfather's cat. Puddles was a medium-sized tabby cat with white and black spotted fur that was covered with a speckling of orange. I never seemed to get along with the cat, and sometimes I'd find the cat chewing on my prosthetic leg when I woke up. Several times the cat had dragged it to various hiding places in the house, leaving me to hobble around looking for it. I guess it's safe to say I hated that cat, but my grandparents loved it. They called Puddles their lucky cat, and included it in all of their pictures. I was 13 when my grandfather fell very ill. He couldn't leave his bed, and I rarely was allowed to see him. Once in a while I'd find him sitting in the kitchen, and could see the toll the illness was taking on him. He looked very thin. His hands and legs wouldn't stop shaking. He'd always smile at me, and was very playful, but it was evident that he was in a lot of pain. As he slowly got worse and worse, he began to grow more detached from reality. More than once he said that I wouldn't be around if not for Puddles, but I shrugged it off as the sickness. In the summer of 2005, I was bringing my grandfather his breakfast, and as I was about to open the door, I heard him talking. I could only make out a few words, such as deal or promise. When things quieted down, I swung open the door to find Puddles sitting on the windowsill with a small, pale white mouse in its jaws. The cat stared at me for a few minutes, and then hopped out the window. It was then that I found my grandfather lying on the floor near the window, dead. The coroner said that he'd probably died while getting up to shut the window at night, but I know what I heard. I kept quiet, thinking that if I'd said anything, they would put me in an asylum or something. The cat had vanished, never again mentioned by my grandmother. When my grandmother passed away 4 years ago, I was given ownership of her belongings. Included with that was a box of pictures, and when I saw them I almost had a heart attack. The pictures are enclosed, and be sure to note the dates on the back. The oldest picture is from 1946, when my grandfather was 11 years old. There is also a video from my 3rd birthday, which was held at my grandparents' a few weeks before my mother cut ties with them. The cat is in every picture and that video. Maybe this isn't something you look into, but I need to know. I need to know that I'm not crazy, or that I am. Something happened a long time ago, and it involves me somehow. Please, I need your help. Sincerely, Herbert Wesley. When I was younger, I lived in a house where the entire upper floor was a single room. The problem was that there was also an unlit crawl space that could be used as a place for storage. I say crawl space, but honestly it could have been another bedroom. Okay, that's fine. Just close the door and try to ignore it. Except, there was no door. Just a big square gaping hole in the middle of the wall that just happened to sit across from my bed. Okay, yeah, nightmare fuel. Okay, just move on, ignore, go to sleep. One day, we decided to see what was in there. Not much. Except this small, almost hallway-like area extending off the main bulk of the room that led to a dead end. There, in that small, smelly, pitch-black area, we found a sleeping bag and supplies for a long stay. We looked around and found that the walls were covered with newspaper clippings, some of them very recent. I had so much trouble sleeping until we moved.
It was a Tuesday. I arrived home with my younger brother Brandon and found another note. Working late, make dinner. I flicked on the television, grabbed a bag of Cheetos, and vaulted on the couch. Then I noticed it. The back door was wide open. My father's shoes, the only pair he had, were sitting on the back porch neatly. I jumped up and walked to the back door, nearly spilling my Cheetos in the process. Dad? Receiving no response was surreal. While my father did work a lot, he never once ignored us while he was home. I walked into the yard and waved to Brendan to follow. A crumpled pair of pants lay nearby, and I instantly knew they were my father's. Once again, I called for my father, but got no response. I put Brandon on my shoulders and stepped through the foliage separating the yard from the swamp beyond, and found my father's hat and tie. After 15 minutes I got to an area of the swamp that was peculiar, but I didn't notice until I looked up to see how late it was getting. About 20 feet above us hung men's dress shirts. I counted 16 white, pressed, and clean shirts, nailed to trees deep in the Marsh Baywood swamp. It was one of the most disturbing things I'd seen, and I immediately decided to turn and head back. I tried calling once more, and this time I got a response. She just wants to decorate her new home. I'll be okay. Go home and make your brother some dinner. I spun to see my father climbing a tree a distance ahead, in an area I couldn't travel to because of the water. Dad? Come on, let's go home. You're scaring me. I watched as the skin of his leg caught on a branch, leaving a long scratch that immediately started to bleed. My father ignored it as he kept climbing. She's going to be mad if you stay. You need to go home. I'm just helping her decorate. He reached into a knot in the side of the tree and pulled out a long metal nail. He leaned against the tree and pressed the tip of the nail to his chest with a smile. That is good? Oh, I'm so glad. It was as though he was talking to someone, but no one was there except us. They're leaving. It's okay. You don't need to. He paused. Alright. My younger brother gripped my head and pointed to the water which had begun to bubble. The swamp began to get darker, even though I swore we had another hour of sunlight left. My skin began to crawl as the bubbling became more violent. I told you she'd be mad. You should leave. Go. My father's voice became more frantic and urgent, though it still had an air of calm happiness. It was like he wanted to yell, but couldn't. My younger brother started to cry as we stared at the bubbling water. A lone hand reached up from its depths. A hand attached to an arm long enough to reach branches higher than I was tall. Run! My father's oddly cheery voice again. Another hand burst from the water, followed by another, and another, each of them grabbing branches. Whatever was down there was pulling itself out. Run! A low, gurgling scream emitted from the water, growing in volume as I watched, transfixed at the amount of hands that were sliding out from beneath the dark waters of the marsh baywood swamp. My younger brother was yanking on my hair. He wanted to run, but I couldn't. I was transfixed. Run! This time, my father's voice was different. It was urgent, it was frantic, and it was a yell. I immediately snapped out of my trance and turned to run. I could hear the thing behind me trying to give chase through the dense trees. I burst into the backyard and slammed the back door behind me. I put Brandon on the couch and grabbed up a kitchen knife and opened the door to the backyard. But nothing was there, aside from my father's shoes, neatly arranged near the door. My father was never found, and when I took the police back to where I had found my father, the only thing we found were the shirts. The 16 that were there before, 12 new ones, and my father's, hanging neatly by an iron nail.
I don't remember my parents. I've seen pictures and heard stories, but they died before I could walk. This story isn't about them though. The only reason I mention it is so that you know why I ended up living with my grandparents. They took me in and have raised me into the woman I am today. I've never felt unloved, always had clothes on my back, and never went hungry. My papi was a tall, wiry man with a long nose and a bald spot. He spent most of his time working the cattle. When he wasn't, he'd sit on the fence in the yard and stare at the line of trees at the edge of the pasture. Whenever I asked him what he was doing, he'd just laugh, pat my head and tell me that I looked just like my mother. My nana was small, polite and well-tempered. When she wasn't taking care of me, she'd sit on the porch, watching cattle graze. It was during these times that she taught me how to knit, something she did often while she sat there. When the sun went down, we'd drink cider and count the fireflies that flew past. Papi would join us and regale us with tales of his childhood adventures. They were a superstitious couple. They left milk on the windowsill at night. They picked up every penny they found. They made me carry a laminated 4-leaf clover with me at all times. We would even shortly walk with any funeral party that crossed our path to avoid bad luck. Yet, the thing they were most adamant about was the closet in my room. To be more precise, that I should never open it after 9 p.m. This rule was so important that every night as my nana tucked me in, she would repeat the rule. Every time I asked, she'd just smile, kiss my forehead and leave me sitting there in the dark. I would often find myself staring at the closet door until the weight of my eyelids pulled me into sleep. It was a rule that I only broke once and never again. I was 8. It was a weekend and the half moon shone through the window, filling my room with a blue glow. I could hear my grandparents downstairs, laughing and talking about the day. I was sitting in my bed, staring at the forbidden door. I was trying to be quiet when I slipped from my bed and wandered over to the door. The floors in the house were old, but I knew the best places to step to avoid the creaks. I remember the door being tall, blame it on my childhood imagination, but the door seemed to stretch up until it vanished into the dark. The handle of the door was so cold, and there was a slight breeze coming from under it. I remember scrunching my toes at the cold before turning the knob and letting the door swing open. I found myself staring at another me, standing in a mirror image of my room. We stood there for several minutes, till the other me leaned forward and pressed her finger to my chest. You're real, she said. Yeah, so are you, I said. Everything about the other room was the same, but reversed. From the picture on my wall I drew for school to the position of my shoes. Everything about the other me was the same, but reversed. She wore the same nightgown and the same scratch over her eye from when I fell out in the field. Is this why Nana didn't want us to open the closet? I said. I guess so. She tilted her head. Why? I raised an eyebrow. No sooner had I said it than the door to her room opened. The light from the hallway made the silhouette of my Nana look monstrous. The other me turned, surprised. I'm sorry. What have you done? Other Nana screamed with a fury I'd never seen and stalked into the room. I stood frozen as she lifted the other me into the air, her eyes hidden in shadow. I heard the other me gasp for air as other Nana screamed profanities and shook her small body. I wanted to move, to shut the door and forget this ever happened, but terror had turned my legs to stone. Never had I seen my Nana ever get this mad. She was like a feral beast, and her screams faded from words to howls and back again. Then she lifted the other me higher and then slammed her into the floor. There was a sickening crack, but other Nana just lifted her up again to slam her down harder. She did it again and again until blood ran down the cracks of the wood floor. When there wasn't enough left to lift, the other Nana began to scream and punch it in a messy rhythm. Don't open the door after 9, she screamed over and over as the blood spattered across the room, floor and her face. Then she slowed down. Her wheels turned into heavy breathing. I still stood there, my mouth open and my heart beating in my ears. The smell of meat and excrement filled my nose. Sweat ran down the back of my neck as I watched her stand up and turn to face me. Then she wheeled again with a fury I could feel. I reached over, grabbed the door and slammed it shut. I never broke their rules again.
I've never been able to see in the dark. I call it night blindness. When the lights get too dim, I'm lost in a sea of darkness, with only my other senses to help me around. I guess that's why the dark has never scared me. I'd gotten so used to navigating through the inky blackness that I dismayed all the childish fears of monsters lurking in the dusk. So calm down. There's nothing there. It's just your imagination getting all worked up.
My mouse hovers over the support button on the YouTube page. I've watched this channel for almost 2 years. I've seen them go from horrible art, audio, and editing to the current state of almost professional grade videos. Do it. I glance at the small doll sitting next to my monitor, and then back at the support button on the page. Should I? Do I have the funds? It's only a few dollars. Nothing more than a bag of chips. Or else... The doll catches my eyes again, and I feel the sweat run down my neck. When I got it, it was cute and friendly. We would talk about my day when I came home, and sit for hours watching this channel. Things changed quickly after the tuber announced that he was having money troubles. I know all your secrets. I will tell everyone. The image of the small, unmoving body of a puppy flits across my mind's eye. I click the support button, and a window pops up, asking for the exact dollar amount. $1, $5, and other. Goosebumps fly up my skin. They won't understand. Give 5, or the world will know. She didn't understand. I was trying to explain why this channel was so important to me, and things got out of hand. My cursor hovers over the next button, and I glance at the doll again. Its eyes are deep brown, just like hers. You did this. You put me here. I thought she would stay buried under the garden, but when the doll first spoke, I realized that something had gone terribly wrong. I input my payment info and hit the buy button. I let out a breath and glanced out my window to the garden, where she's supposed to be. My eyes rest on the mound of dirt that marks where her body lies. I feel the softness of the doll's hands on my neck as it cuddles against my cheek. We'll be together forever. I don't know how long I've been here. There's a constant hum that I feel slowly driving me mad. The darkness is incredible, and I can hear muffled sounds coming from outside. Sounds of it. The thing that took me away. It's been only a few minutes, but I can barely remember the smiles of my children. The children I'd protected from this thing. Children whom I'd protected from its kind before. But this one, whenever the others had won, I would wake up later to find one of my children missing. However, this one was different. It was not after them. It wanted me. It wanted to take me for its own. It wanted to capture me. But first it would humiliate me. It knew I had no chance. It was levels above me. I only thought of the children as I threw myself into battle. The fight must have lasted for hours. The constant beatings left me bloody, and I could feel the exhaustion slow down my movements. They attempted several times to drug me, and the last one stuck. My snout smashed into the ground as sleep overtook me, and I woke up here. There's something about the hum, something that keeps itching the back of my mind. Why had I fought this thing? Maybe I was testing it. Maybe I'd been looking for one that could finally tame me. This damned hum is now a melody to my ears. This wasn't so bad. I'd found what I was looking for since I was born. I needed it, and it needed me. I would protect it, like I would my own child, had I had any. But for now I would wait, silently yearning for the day that light would flood my new home, and I'd hear that phrase, that simple phrase. I choose you, Pikachu.
My personal Seamoth submarine floated above the opening of the cave. The depth meter read 70 meters. Nothing to worry about, but I knew this hole went much deeper than that. I glanced at my vitals. I was good. I had recently eaten a large meal of cooked peeper and disinfected water. I had been surprised to find peepers so tasty, and even though the water tasted of chlorine, the meal still made me feel like I was home, instead of stranded on a planet light years away. To my right, a loud boom resonated through the water, followed by the moan of the passive reefback. I had heard it many times before, but it almost felt like it was telling me to stop stalling. I took a deep breath and pushed the throttle forward into the caves. As my depth meter reached 130 meters, the light from above gave up its descent. I was left surrounded by darkness. The lights from my Seamoth were the only thing that kept me from smashing into the sides of the ever-narrowing caves. At 140 meters, the caves opened up into a massive cavern. I felt my throat constrict and my breathing become heavy. The floor and walls were lost in the blackness. Not even the lights from my Seamoth could find the bottom.
I adjusted my sweaty grip on the sea moth controls, took a deep breath to calm down, and pushed forward into the black. Soon the opening behind me vanished as well. I felt the panic rise and forced it down again. Lithium was in these caves, a valuable resource. In the distance, I saw a massive glowing eye fade into view. I quickly tried to stop, but before I could, another glowing eye appeared, followed by another, and another. Mushrooms. Massive mushrooms, with a large hole in the center of their glowing caps. As I moved forward, I was relieved to find myself at the well-lit floor of the cavern. Littering the floor, I could see smaller mushrooms, interspersed with crystalline lithium. I would have whooped with joy if I knew someone would hear me. I climbed from the sea moth and began to gather the abundance of lithium. When I turned to return to my ship, I saw that the lights of my sub were surrounded by dozens of small fish, all of them foreign, but none of them seemed aggressive. I reached out and grabbed one that was mostly eyeball. I stuffed the fish into my sack. Later I would see how it tasted. Perhaps it would taste better than the peeper, but I doubted it. Slipping back into my sea moth, I felt myself relax. Now all I had to do was turn around and head back. From the corner of my eye I saw familiar, cyan eyes rush forward. A bone shark. I felt the sea moth jerk as it was slammed into a spin. I fought to regain control, only to see the gaping maw of the bone shark as it once again plowed into my small submersible. Lights and alarms blaring. I knew the sub couldn't take much more, so I pulled back to get some distance. I realized that I'd gotten turned around a second too late. A large crack filled my ears, and I was forcibly ejected from the sea moth as it ran into the floor, unusable. Cussing to myself, I began to swim upward, away from the bone shark lurking among the mushrooms. I repeatedly told myself that I'd gotten away, but it didn't help. My mind kept seeing it lurking there, just out of sight behind me. I was surrounded by darkness now. The glow of the mushrooms lost behind me with the comforting lights of the sea moth. I pushed on, knowing that above me was the opening that led out to freedom. My muscles burned, and the oxygen gauge warned me that my backup supply was running low. My body collided with the roof of the cavern, sending pain searing through me. Panicked, I felt around for the opening that led out, knowing that it was already too late. I screamed into the dark waters of the foreign planet as the last of my oxygen disappeared.
The crowd wanted him to continue the act. Smiling at the cheers that were filling the silent room, he flicked his wrist out to his side, allowing a black and white wand to slip from his sleeve. Catching it in his hand, he pointed it out to the crowd and laughed a theatrical laugh. For my next trick, he flamboyantly gestured off stage, I will need my assistants. He smiled at his word humor. He walked to the side of the stage and pulled on stage a large box on wheels. Decorated with gold, this box stood about half as tall as him. He lifted the lid and looked inside, his face filled with mock surprise. Oh dear. He gripped the box and tilted it so that the audience could see inside. Within the box lay a naked woman, her body relaxed and sleeping. Gravity pulled a strand of brown hair away from her face to reveal a large bruise across her forehead. It appears as though my assistant has decided to take a nap within this box. The sound of his audience's laughter and screams continued to make no echoes, yet fill his ears till a smile graced his face. Over here, I have some rather sharp swords. He turned the box so that some swords attached to the back were revealed. The crowd went wild when the swords were shown. He made a note of the family in the back, the father sitting next to a pregnant wife, while her children sat in the chairs just in front of them. It seemed that the empty screams were the loudest from them. They had been to almost every one of his shows, his most devoted fans. He lifted one of the swords from where it rested and used his other hand to close the lid. He smiled at the audience as he stabbed the sword in the side of the box. The sharpness of these blades is something to be marveled at. He shoved another blade into the box at a different angle. At one time, kings used these blades for battle against dragons and other creatures. A dark puddle was spreading across the stage from the bottom of the box as he shoved another blade into the hilt. They came into my possession while I was traveling in India. With each thrust of a blade, the crowd's gasps filled his heart. The final blade met its target straight down. Well, it seems that we have taught my assistant a lesson. Thank you all for being here on this momentous occasion. His eyes flowed over the unmoving crowd and then back to the box. This one would make a nice member of the audience. He would probably use her to replace one of the children whose smell was becoming unbearable. One needed an audience.
February 28th, 3:35 p.m.
Lucas, we just heard the news. Are you holding up okay? I understand if you need some time, but we're all here for you. I don't know what I would do if... I couldn't handle losing both of them. Listen, if you need anything, just give us a call. Lucy is devastated. Her sister was all the family she had left, aside from me and Marion. Speaking of, Lucy and I will both be at the wake, but Marion is going to be babysat. She's just too young, and I don't think she'd understand. She and little Timmy were close. I just want to avoid any bad memories. Call for any reason. Bye.
End of message. March 14th, 6:51 p.m.
Hey, you should come over again sometime. I know that the empty house is getting to you. I saw it on your face when you left the other day. You know we're here for you, right? Alright, that's all I was calling for. Oh, right. Marion wants to thank you for all the toys. Her face lit up when she opened the box and she's been playing with them non-stop. I think she recognized a few of them, but she didn't ask many questions. I had to throw out the sketch pad though. Most of the pages were used up and were covered with really graphic drawings. Did you realize that Timmy was drawing things like this? Sorry, I shouldn't have brought it up. I'm just gonna go. Talk to you later, okay? Don't be a stranger.
End of message. March 17th, 7:24 a.m.
Lucas, I think someone is breaking into our house during the night. Today, I woke up to find those damn sketchpad pages scattered around the living room. This is the third time I've thrown that thing out. I don't want to sound rude, but are you doing this? I know you're going through a tough time, but you're scaring Lucy and Marion. If it happens again, I'm just gonna call the police, and I really suggest that you get some help.
End of message. March 17th, 10:52 p.m.
Did you do this, Lucas? The entire house is trashed. It's like a cyclone went ripping through here. Lucy was in hysterics when she saw the message you wrote on the wall. She thinks we're haunted and wants to move. I was wondering why you weren't at the party, and now I know. I'm sorry, I can't put this off anymore. I'm calling the police. Please get some help.
End of message. March 17th, 11:45 p.m. End of message. March 18th, 1:12 a.m.
Uncle Lucas? This is Marion. Timmy was really mad at Daddy for ripping up his sketchpad. So he did something really bad. Mommy and Daddy aren't moving and I'm really scared. I only know your number, so I was hoping you could call for help. We live at 214 Bebblebush Lane, Appleton, Wisconsin. Please hurry. Timmy said he wasn't mad at me. But he was so angry before. I don't want him to get me.
End of message.
28 crouched in the air duct, watching the adult gorilla outside reach a finger into its nose. It sat, bored, in front of the large sign that said Loading Bay. A guard placed just to keep 28 out. They had found his hiding place and his side project. There weren't any humans left. 28 had counted. He had recounted. He saw each of their faces flash by as he assigned them a number. And 99 lifeless bodies lie somewhere inside the Horizon lunar colony, and 24 lay out on the lunar landscape. 122 humans. And Dr. Harold Winston. He would never assign a number to him. All 28 needed was to get past. Then he was free. He reached into the pocket of his uniform and pulled out the flare gun. He slowly slid the grate aside and took aim. A single shot, that's all he had. Dr. Winston's face flashed behind 28's eyes. He adjusted his aim and pulled the trigger. He'd seen Dr. Winston lying in front of him, legs broken, breathing heavily, and still smiling, saying that it was all going to be okay. 28 knew this felt wrong, but there was fear. If he didn't do this, the other gorillas would kill him too. As 28 raised the large hunk of metal above his head, Dr. Winston forgave him. The other gorillas were chanting his name. The world lost focus. His breathing came out ragged, and tears streamed down his cheeks. The room went silent when 28 dropped the object to the side. He wasn't going to do this. Flames didn't engulf the adult, but their roar of pain filled the small hallway as the flare burned into their skin. 28 leaped from the air duct and scrambled between the legs of the massive gorilla as it tried to stop the burning. 28 didn't bother being quiet as he slammed into the steel door. Before the door had even fully closed, 28 pressed the panel on the side. There was a loud crash on the door, but it was too late. The door was already locked. It would take hours to get open.
28.
The gorilla known as 13 growled.
You aren't one of them. Open this door now. This is your home.
28 glanced at the desk, where a pair of glasses lay atop his plans for his rocket ship. Delicately, he lifted them and looked through them at his creation. It had taken him weeks to collect all the parts. Another slam echoed through the room, and 28 stepped up to the rocket.
If I get in there...
13 was pounding so hard that 28 was questioning the strength of that steel door.
I am going to tear you apart!
28 pulled a small cube from his pocket. This small thing would power his entire trip to Earth, or it would explode and kill him.
Only those who will risk going too far can possibly find out how far one can go.
He whispered to himself as he slipped the cube into the receptacle.
Open this door, 28!
With an angry growl, 28 turned toward the door and roared.
My name is not 28. My name is Winston.
Then he slipped the glasses on and climbed into his rocket ship. This was no longer his home, and 28 was no longer his name. He pressed the button to launch his new beginning. My eyes snapped open, and I pulled myself to a sitting position. Sweat dripped from my forehead as I shook it. That dream was so real. My heart thudded in my chest, and I fought to catch my breath. Every smell and scent was still vivid in my mind, as though I had just stepped from that place. I could still picture the long pipes, vision-obscuring steam, red-tinted lights, and him. I used the back of my hand to wipe the sweat away, and looked at the clock next to my television. 3 a.m. I was already late. Still, this was important. I had a role to play in this creation, and I should strive to fill that role completely. I took a deep breath, pushed the images of my nightmare out of my head, and stood. As I slipped the mask on my head, I felt euphoria as my predatory urges surfaced. When I wore the mask, I was no longer me. I was no longer Travis Wells, film student and scaredy cat. Instead, I became the unstoppable antagonist of countless films, the invincible predator that wouldn't stay down. With this mask, I'd stood up to the bullies and turned my life into the films I used to play on repeat. I had even found a protagonist. She was a blonde bombshell that was smarter than she pretended to be. She was strong, independent, and witty. But that wasn't the best part. She also had a tragic backstory. When she was younger, she'd watched her father murdered in his sleep. I had known her for years, and even would go over to her house when she was younger. Our fates intertwine. I can't wait for the day when she fulfills her role, making the movie complete. When I arrived, the only light coming from her house was through the living room window, the shifting blue of a late-night horror show. Travis Wells would have given up when faced with the tall fence blocking access to her backyard, but the antagonist slipped over it without a sound. I found the back door unlocked, and I slipped the knife from under the black tattered cloak I wore. The silver glinted in the moon as I pushed the door open. There she sat, wrapped in blankets, watching a rerun of The Hills Have Eyes. Excitement filled me, and my hand shook as I raised the knife above my head. It would happen soon. Something would give away my presence and she would fight back. In this final showdown, she'd get the upper hand, and that would be it for me. With surprise, I felt the sharp sting of 5 blades cut into my stomach. My eyes wide, I glanced down to see the man from my nightmare smiling up at me. He laughed as he dragged his blade fingers up to my ribcage. "Wrong movie, bitch," he laughed as the world around me drained away.